Well, hello there, dear listeners. It's Michael Osinski.
And Tyler Esselman.
And you have the distinct pleasure of listening to This One Goes to 11.
This One Goes to 11, a music podcast where we, Michael and I, invite our friends, family, members of our community, complete strangers, into our virtual living room to make their case for what they believe is a perfect album.
So perfect, in fact, the 10 out of 10 just isn't good enough.
Never has been, never will be.
I feel like we're at the point now where we're starting to run out of what to say after we say 10 out of 10 isn't good enough. You know, like it's recorded so many intros. Like, what do we? I mean, it just speaks for itself.
It's not going to be clever anymore, everybody. So sorry. Manage your expectations about what comes after the 10 out of 10 isn't good enough.
Don't expect genius material after that.
We're only human.
Seriously.
But we do have an excellent podcast episode for you today. Who graced us with their presence on this one, Michael?
Well, it's someone that I've known since August 1997, and that is one Mr. Christian Pedone. Christian Pedone is an avid music consumer and friend of the pod. He has been teaching American and comparative politics in Philadelphia for the past 17 years and runs an after-school rock band program for high schoolers. Christian is a veteran of several Philadelphia bands, most notably Strange Engineers, now on Spotify, and I have personally witnessed him play Pearl Jam's Bugs on the accordion in the middle of 2nd Street, Philadelphia. It's Christian Pedone.
Christian Pedone. I would take his comparative politics class. That sounds great.
Yeah, I think like if I might have liked social studies and history if I had Christian for a teacher in high school. No, no shade on my high school. None of my high school social studies teachers are listening to this. Why do I even care? Why am I trying to cover that?
You never know. You never know.
Yeah. Now we're gonna get an email. We're gonna a strongly worded email from
Excuse me, Mr. Osinski, but I did a wonderful job teaching you social studies.
Oh God. Anyway, what can we say about this conversation? It's a bizarre little album we're gonna be talking about, but Christian, he's a good job of handling all the material, I think.
Totally, it's an album. It's a band you almost certainly know, even if you aren't able to name one of their songs. You almost certainly have heard their songs. Highly influential, an acquired taste, for sure. But getting into this album was really gratifying, and I think you'll all enjoy the conversation we have about it.
Indeed. So let's get right to that conversation. Christian Pedone, welcome to This One Goes to 11. How you doing?
Great, thanks for having me.
No problem. You know, you've been on the list for a while. Just been like waiting for the right opportunity.
Well, here I am. I'm ready.
all business today. I like it.
All business.
Well, if we're gonna jump right in, Christian Pedone, what album hath thou brought before the tribunal today?
I have chosen the 1989 album of the year, Doolittle by Pixies.
Excellent. And Pixies, not the Pixies.
Not the Pixies, Pixies.
No. Yeah. There's a whole thing about that. People have a thing about that.
Exactly.
There's another band. I was trying to think, what was the other band that people put a "the" before?
Oh, I know one, because it's a complete ripoff of Pixies, and it's Toadies. A band in 1995 that stole their entire sound from Doolittle.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'd never thought of it that way, but now that you've said that, I totally draw the connection.
Oh, they're very, very similar. Imitation
is the highest form of flattery, I guess. I don't know. They probably didn't make much money off of it.
Well, they had one song.
Oh, that album in 1995 was pretty good. It did pretty well.
Just the song was called Possum Kingdom, right? Not the album.
Sure, yeah.
Possum Kingdom.
Tyler, have you never heard this song?
No, I don't think I have. Oh, or if I have, I don't know.
Yeah,
you have.
Okay.
It's very Pixies, Tyler. It's creepy. It's kind of like sexually inappropriate, like around the borders. There's like weird vocals. The bass line is like a Pixies bass. You know it. You'll know it if you heard it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Putting that on the list of things.
We'll play the song after the episode. You can listen. You've heard it, I think.
Okay.
Well, Christian, before we give you a chance to make your case for Doolittle, and we will evaluate your case, of course, because we're big on scoring and things.
Yeah.
You get to evaluate our case in a little segment. Apparently, it's everyone's favorite segment.
It is. It is The Beginner's Guide to Doolittle by Pixies.
In 60 seconds.
In 60 seconds, right.
Yeah, okay, there we go.
60 seconds to give a little taste of Pixies, and you get to decide how I did in whatever terms you think are best.
Yeah, whatever rubric you're feeling tonight.
Think you can handle that?
I can handle it.
Okay,
All right.
amazing.
Okay, Tyler, I have 60 seconds on the clock. Are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready.
All right, 3, 2, 1, go.
Hey, here comes your band. Pixies, that is. 1986, Amherst, Massachusetts. Black Francis, née Charles Michael Kittredge Thompson IV, and Joey Santiago met while students at UMass Amherst. The boys started whipping up songs while working odd jobs around Boston, and eventually, in a bid to make a real go of the band, placed a want ad looking for a bassist who enjoyed the music of both Husker Du and Peter, Paul, and Mary, both of those. One Miss Kim Deal was the only respondent, though she had never touched a bass in her life. After adding drummer David Lovering and moving rehearsals to his parents' garage, Pixies was officially born and began to develop their sound in the many bars and rock clubs of Boston. The band's sophomore effort, Doolittle, took the raw, well-read punk sensibility of their full-length debut, Surfer Rosa, threw a bunch of money at it, and came up with something special. It also cemented the loud, quiet, loud dynamic as a signature Pixies move, and one that would influence countless artists across genre in the years to come, including some cats you might have heard of, Kurt Cobain, Tom York, and The Strokes.
All right.
It's a little taste. It's a little taste.
A little taste of Pixies. A little Pixie stick, one might say.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll see myself out. All right, Christian.
That was pretty good. Who's Tom York?
You might know him as Thom York.
Dude, come on. I know you guys are Radiohead guys. And Tom York is not influenced by anyone. He just descended from whatever planet he came from.
That's a good point. So how'd I do? What would you say? How would you rate that recap?
That was pretty great. I think you got most of the details there. Maybe one little fact that got omitted is that Kim originally is going by Mrs. John Murphy.
Mrs. John Murphy.
Couple records as kind of like a tongue-in-cheek feminist joke. She's married to a guy named John Murphy, and I think John Murphy actually introduces Lovering to the band.
This is correct. Yes,
or that's true. John Murphy's important because, they don't tell you. The Pixies don't tell you anything. Like, it's very hard to find out what was going on with them, and so you get very conflicting reports. And actually, Kim's husband is like the only level-headed one who tells us what was going on. He's like, "Yeah, I was in the studio and this happened." Like, you get weird stories from him of all people. No, nice job. I mean, it is their sophomore album. I mean, there is Come On Pilgrim, which is the first thing.
Yeah, like an EP, right?
Really like a thing. Yeah, it's better to ignore it, I think.
So maybe we'll give me how about seven Mrs. John Murphys on the board for me before we start giving points to you. How does that sound?
Take an 8th. Treat yourself.
Okay, great. 8 Mrs. John Murphys. Great.
Very generous tonight. Very generous.
I appreciate it. So tell me, Christian, it's wonderful to meet you. Such a important figure from an important period of Michael's life. I always love meeting people from that era. It's interesting to see the connective musical tissue that the people from that circle share. But what we like to ask our guests at the start here is just sort of to characterize what your relationship is with music in general. How does it exist for you in your life?
I am much like you two gentlemen, a music obsessed person. I don't understand people who aren't moved by music. There's people you'll encounter in your life who are like, yeah, it's just music. I don't know. It's just songs. I don't care. And I just never understood that, even from like a very young age as a kid, remembering hearing songs on the radio and just, asking my parents, like, what is this? What is this? They're like, I don't know what this song is, And I'm like, I need to know. And it's the 80s and you just don't know. And then it turns out it's just Huey Lewis and the News, because that's what it always was, but it was like, I was fascinated by it. And I started playing music when I was like a teenager, I guess, young teenager. And was just in bands like my whole life, all the way up through like my 30s, when I just decided I was too old to be lugging equipment around. But every single day of my life there's music somewhere in it.
How do you listen to it nowadays? Are you a streamer, or do you have specific? I'm always fascinated when people have like they're saying, no, I won't use Spotify. I'm not into Spotify. But like, are you a vinyl guy? Are you a headphones guy? What's going on?
No, streaming. Yes, Spotify. Yeah. It's amazing. What are you talking about? It's the greatest thing in the world. If you go back and tell me at like age 15, it'd be like, you could pay $10 a month and have every song forever.
Right.
Like, I would have just been like, put me in a coma and wake me up then.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, what are we doing? What am I doing here? I mean,
it's pretty wild, isn't it? It's pretty wild that this is the state of affairs we're in right now.
And it's even more than that. Because I know we're going to talk a lot of Pixies. I don't want to get ahead of myself. But when I'm looking for like a new band, if I'm like, I want a new band to listen to right now, I have a trick I use that I figured out a couple years ago on Spotify, where I just go listen to Breeders, and then whatever band comes on after Spotify runs out of the top played Breeders songs, that's my new favorite. That's just my new favorite band, because they'll be like,
the algorithm, trust it.
They're like, here you go. I found like 3 or 4 bands that way, where I'm just like listening to a band I already really like. And then they were like, here's the next thing. And then there you go. I mean, that never happened. You know, younger,
we can't have shame about that, right? You get 900 points for trusting the algorithm. Okay.
The algorithm. I mean, they make some mistakes, but I mean, it was better than the alternative when you're, in the 90s and you're like buying a Silverchair CD for $20 or something.
Well, how did you do it back then? How did you do it? Like, because I've heard a little bit about Michael's, I'm not that it matters, but I'm a few years younger than Michael. And so, like our music, our the way that we have found music has discussing those relationships over time has been interesting. How'd you do it when you were a kid and a teenager?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm how old am I? 43, right? Mm-hmm. So my like musical kind of coming of age was like 1995, 1996, right? So I missed the Pixies the first time. I missed that first lap, and we at that time, like, it was really like MTV, man. It was MTV, FM radio, and if you were lucky, your friend had a weird cousin who had some tapes or something. Like, that was it. That was the only way that you got into it. Like, you got into music from, we all got kind of, we're there for like the big 1991, shift where like, Billboard started like actually reporting what was actually happening on the musical charts. And like, all of this weird stuff started coming out, and be like, yeah, people are actually listening to all this different music. And, things kind of took a toll. And then, I know Mike and I both, we really took, the early days of grunge, like, directly on the chin, just all of it. And then I also had, the friend with the weird cousin connection with punk rock. That was my other thing. So I was coming from a direction of punk rock music, from like, tapes and like basement shows and stuff in New York and like Lower East Side Manhattan that I would go to when I was in high school. And then like just this monolithic grunge rock thing that was happening at that time, which was just, monumental. And then I grew up in New York, so there was a lot of hip hop too,
Oh, nice. So what hip hop? What are we talking?
Oh, I mean, I went to high school I graduated in 1997 in Staten Island, New York. Okay.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you know anything about Staten Island, New York, but it does have another name it goes by.
Shaolin.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And so Wu-Tang was everything when I was in high school. So yes, that was another universal.
Wu-Tang Financial. If you
yes.
one of the better sketches, one of the better comedy sketches of all time.
Didn't y'all do an episode, a Wu-Tang episode?
We did.
Yep.
Yes. I even saw that. Yeah.
It's funny. I don't know. You talking about like discovering music in the 90s unearthed a strange memory, and for the longest time I couldn't remember how I found Pearl Jam, and I just remembered that I think the first time I ever heard them, this is so weird, I was at a pool party for my church handbell choir, and someone recommended that someone like played a song off. I think they might have played Jeremy off of 10. That's how I discovered. I don't know why. I don't know how you just made me remember that, Christian, but like that is how I discovered Pearl Jam.
In the craziest ways. I have a story similar to that where I was at a street festival in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn when I was in high school, and there was a DJ on the street. It was the Fifth Avenue Festival. We used to go every year and hang out, and there's a DJ playing this song, and it's like this hip-hop record, and it got stuck in my head, and I was humming it to myself for years, and I'm like, I think I must have made this song up because I never heard it again, and it was a great song, and it's Bonita Applebum by Tribe Called Quest. It was awesome. I was right.
You were right. Okay, I'm giving you 2,000 points for the weird cousin with tapes.
Yeah,
I'm going to give Christian 3,000 more points for the fact that you were in a handbell choir in church.
Well, you're giving him points for my handbell choir.
Yes, I am giving points to him for the handbell choir because that is not something I knew about you. And then I'll also give you 5,000 points for writing Bonita Applebum. Christian.
Thought I imagined it.
Well, this is a good, talking about discovering music. This is a good segue into our next question, which is, how did you discover this album in particular? What was that experience like? Was it super memorable, or what stuck with you about it?
Oh yeah. So, like I said, I missed Pixies the first time. Like Pixies, they have their heyday 1988, 1989. I'm a strong believer in that there are only really two Pixies records. There's Surfer Rosa and there's Doolittle. And after that, we have a totally different thing. And it has its merits. It has its pluses. It has its minuses moving forward. But really, I think when you look at those two records back to back, which are made in such a short period of time, you have one band that doesn't really exist past that. So I really missed it the first time. And very kind of, grunge was just like such a huge thing that was happening, and just encompassed all of rock music at that time. And it was very, very into all of those bands. And I was also very into punk rock bands. And as time went on, you start to, because it's this musical discovery period where you have to kind of detective and sleuth things out and piece them together. Mm-hmm. You have to start like kind of looking at like what the influences are, and you kind of trace it back. Well, I had heard the name Pixies and just kind of dismissed it. And then there was this CD that I found that was an absolutely horrendous cover album of Pixies songs.
Oh, shit.
Called Where Is My Mind? A Tribute to the Pixies. Ugh. And it had on it, have you heard this thing?
I haven't.
It had a lot of punk rock bands that I was into that were on there, specifically one. There was this punk rock band that kind of turned indie band from Pennsylvania that I used to like obsess over when I was in high school. And they happened to be on it. And at that time, it was one of those things where you had to, I was like, anything they put out, I had to get. Yeah. So they covered La La Love You on this awful tribute album. And I got it, and it had Weezer on there. There's an absolutely deranged cover of Gigantic by Real Big Fish on there.
Oof.
What? Yeah, but it's not a ska song. They did it like a disco dance track. I don't know. But the point is I got this CD because I'm like, okay, well, Weston, that's the punk rock band I was really into when I was a kid. I was like, they're on this. I got to get it. And I'm listening to it, and I'm like, well, these bands are bad. Like, Braid is a disaster, and I think Not a Surf is on is pretty good. The Not a Surf track I remember being okay.
Oh, man,
but
I forgot about that band. Jeez.
Oh yeah, Not a Surf is they're actually one of those bands that actually are way more. They've done a lot more than you think. They've been around for a long time. They put out a lot of good stuff. But Not a Surf is on there, and then I'm like, oh my god, like all of these bands are into Pixies, and then I'm like, I gotta I got to unpack this because these songs started off good. And so I went backwards, and, you know, I kind of worked my way back from grunge and from the Nirvana stuff. And they're like, oh yeah, we love Pixies, you know, that's in it. And then these punk rock bands are like all putting out this compilation. Then I got my hands on Doolittle, and just, it was like a mind blow experience where put it on, you're like, oh, this is the thing. Like, I liked everything else, but this is the root of all that, you know? Like, I knew, I was into Breeders. Like, I was into, like, Throwing Muses. I liked Belly, but I didn't follow the tracks back yet because I came later, you know?
Cite your sources.
Yeah, cite your sources, exactly. So kind of going backwards and, like, following the track back, and kind of found this album, and then just kind of, like, I had originally a tape of it. And I had this old beat up Ford Explorer in college, just wore the tape out, you know, in the tape deck, you know, and it's also got a great tape flip. This album has a very good, I love a good tape flip.
Oh, where does the point at which it happens?
Yeah, where does it happen?
After Monkey Gone to Heaven and before Mr. Greaves.
Oh, that is good.
It's a good tape flip. It's
that.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's the same on the vinyl.
I don't know.
800 points for a great tape flip.
I love a good tape flip.
Our Pixies, we talk a lot about genre on here and how it's kind of all bullshit, but you know, are Pixies a punk rock band, or are they because they exist in a sort of liminal space between grunge and like 80s punk, I think. Yeah. And I know that Bowie, I read a quote that Bowie said that they are making some of the best, I think, what did he say? That they're making some of the best rock music of the 80s. Is that what he said? But how does that strike you, since you are a punk guy?
Yeah, well, the thing about Pixies and punk rock is they are punk rock in that they embody what punk rock is supposed to be. Now, are they a punk rock band? Clearly not. But the thing about them that was so unbelievably refreshing in the context of 1989 is the fact that they just, in the best possible way, just don't care. They got together and they're like, we're going to be a band. You said it in the intro. They're like, we like Husker Du, which is like a hardcore punk rock band, and Peter Salisbury. They don't sound anything like that. Okay, they don't sound like anything. These guys just picks up the instruments, and these were the only songs that they could possibly write. The songs are bizarre. They don't make any sense musically, and they don't care. And that is what is so amazingly punk rock about it. They know how songs are supposed to go, and they don't care. They're going to do what they want to do, and they're not really going to really conform to however anyone thinks that things should be, with maybe some exceptions. Here, Your Man, the obvious exception on this album, where they were like, okay, we have to write like a song if we want to put it on like the radio and like, you know, get money enough to tour. Like, we have to like rein it in a little bit. Right. You know, and just kind of just tighten it up a little bit so that we can do that. But I feel that they really are punk rock in that aspect. Now, obviously, they're not they're not playing like the double beat drums and, you know, their power chords the whole time. The other thing that's just amazingly refreshing about them, and also kind of punk rocky for that period of time, is they're ugly.
Yeah, they are kind of ugly, aren't they?
I love it. That was something that I loved about them when I first saw them. It's like, they don't look like they even know each other. They don't like
so apt.
You know, 1989, like when Doolittle comes out, and like one of the biggest rock records in 1989 that I remember is Dr. Feelgood by Motley Crue.
Oh, yes.
Okay. That's the same period of time.
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
Time where like that's happening, and like Kim is picking up a bass for like, you know, like she doesn't know how to play the instrument, you know, which is like so Sid Vicious, you know, that
is punk rock, yeah.
You know, and they're just like ripping out these songs, and they're like, we don't care. This is what we did.
You know, I had never thought of this until you said that, but now it seems like when I think of them, they almost look like Bizarro World Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah, I can see that. I have this like piece of like headcanon that's definitely not true because Black Francis, Frank Black, what I tend to call him Frank Black.
Yeah, he's
Um,
nutso.
I love him. Oh my god. First of all, I love a band with internal tension, and I love to pick a side. And I do
Oh.
in my heart for Kim, but I'm a Frank guy.
This is funny. Before we started recording, this is a little peek behind the curtain. Is that Michael and I have taken to kind of like just mapping out some of the points that we might go towards this stuff that interested us about the album or about the history of the band. And I was like, Michael asked me what I might ask, and I was like, I think I might see if Christian is a messy bitch who lives for drama, and if he lives for the drama that this band is synonymous with. And
Well,
you do.
that's oh yeah, big time. But I want to get to my personal piece of something that
Headcanon. Yeah, go.
Yeah, I'm going to ruin Frank Black for you. Is when I first saw Frank Black, Black Francis as he was known at the time, and I'm looking at him and I'm like, okay, so this band is from the late '80s.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going by Black Francis, and I'm looking at his face and his haircut, and I'm like, is this a joke based on Pee-wee's Big Adventure? Because the villain in that is Francis, and he bears a striking resemblance to Frank Black.
Oh.
And it's not, apparently. He said it's like some kind of thing his dad was going to name his next kid or something.
Oh,
in the
really? Okay.
Frank Black way, he doesn't give a lot of interviews, and when he does, he says conflicting and weird things. There's this famous Esquire interview he did where they asked him to explain all of the lyrics on this album, and it's
oh god.
And he does a passable job, but he also just keeps veering into just insanity, so it's tough. But so I always kind of pictured him as the guy who stole Pee-wee's bike. A little bit.
You know what? It's as long as you say it's true. It's true. This is the age we live in now, Christian. That is true.
Yeah. Now, getting back to the drama, yes, I love the drama of this band. The drama of this band is amazing. It's part of what makes Doolittle so good, because Doolittle. All right, let me see if I can analogize this. Doolittle is the best version of Pixies because Surfer Rosa, everyone's just happy to be there. They're happy to be there. And they're just like, let's make music. It'll be great. And they do stuff that doesn't necessarily work. Like a lot of songs don't work. Like the track where Frank is singing through the distortion, it's just not working for me. You're much more disturbing and strange when you're singing in your normal voice. We have Gigantic, which is not a Pixies song. Okay. It's not on Pixies set lists now. They don't play it anymore. It's on Breeders set lists. If you go see Breeders, they'll play Gigantic. And it doesn't work. Like if you listen to it, like actually try to listen to Gigantic, it's Frank is making a mess of it. He doesn't know how to be a second banana at all. At all. Like Kim's amazing at it. She's like, I'm going to sing these great backing vocals. It's going to be wonderful. If you listen to Gigantic, Kim's like, I'm going to do this song. And Frank starts by like, what are you doing, man?
Does that fit with this, like this loud, quiet, loud dynamic thing that has become, or is that a manifestation of that in your opinion, or?
That's not like this loud. That's just him not knowing how to not be himself. He needs to be the guy in the band. He needs to be the main guy in the band. So in that first record, I feel like they were all over the place. Some of the songs work wonderfully. Some of them just don't work at all. But this second real record is when like they reined it in. They brought in some of like the things that got rid of some of the things that weren't working. Everybody kind of, for the most part, knew what their role was. And because of that, there wasn't a lot of happiness in the recording of it. It ends up breaking up the band. If I can analogize it, I know this is a stretch.
Go for it. We want this.
Are you Outcast people?
Yes.
Enough, yeah.
Yes.
Doolittle is Stankonia. It is the best possible version of the band.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And then what happens is these guys have to go their separate ways. They can't do it anymore together. They can't compromise like this anymore. Like,
oh yeah,
2000 is like, okay, you kind of, he's like, big boy, I love you, but you kind of made a mess of Miss Jackson a little bit. I got to we got to do Speaker Box, The Love Below. And honestly, the Frank Black solo album and Pod, like that's the way I see that. It's like Breeders, like they're each going to go do their own thing. And like those two albums are kind of their own thing. And
so Doolittle is Stankonia. Okay.
Doolittle as Stankonia is, I believe, I'll stand by that.
I like that. Okay. I like that. 800 points for that. Okay. That brings us to a good point for you to share what your standout track is from the album. This is probably a hard choice. There's a lot of good ones on here. So what would you say is the one for you?
Okay. Well, it's really hard to pick one. There's so many. Just about every track on the album is amazing.
That's great.
In its own way. I chose a weird one. I chose Tame. One of the things that I love about Pixies in general, even on their albums that are not particularly great or in their later works and stuff like that, is that they let you know who they are early in a record. And Tame is track 2 on this. And that takes guts to be like, hey, here's this unbelievable opening track, which I could talk about all day, which is, of course, Debaser, which is wonderful. It's so good. And then he's like, okay, hold on a second. I got to do this now. And it's right at the beginning of the record. And it is something that stands out. It is disturbing in ways. It embodies a lot of what makes Pixies their own kind of unique thing. And so I just love it. And if I'm showing someone Pixies for the first time, which I've had the pleasure to do a few times, it's definitely on my list of songs to show them.
Oh,
Specifically the bridge.
Well, should we listen to it, and then we can talk about the bridge on the other side?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right.